John Carreyrou, Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. Prepare to dive into the whirlwind journey of Elizabeth Holmes and her once promising company, Theranos, as recounted in John Carreyrou's Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. This book's summary uncovers the twists and turns of Theranos' ambitious mission to revolutionize the healthcare industry with their Edison blood testing machine. Yet, numerous obstacles, technical issues, and the pressure to perform lead to a web of deceit, forcing readers to question the ethics within Silicon Valley and the price of success.
Revolutionizing Healthcare with Theranos. Inspired by her fear of needles, Elizabeth Holmes envisioned a wearable patch for regular blood testing using microneedles. After founding Theranos with Shonak Roy in 2004, they soon realized that microneedles couldn't draw enough blood, and their concept evolved. They developed a two-part solution, a credit card-sized blood tester that required only a pinprick of blood, and a toaster-sized analyzer for diagnosing 240 ailments. If successful, this revolutionary invention could democratize healthcare and put diagnostics within the reach of millions, even in remote and impoverished areas. A simple fear of needles drove Elizabeth Holmes to imagine a world where patients could easily keep track of their health without the discomfort of blood tests. She conceived a wearable patch that could test blood throughout the day using tiny microneedles. The device's potential was astounding. Imagine having real-time blood work updates available for doctors to assist with diagnoses. In 2004, Holmes and her Stanford University peer, Shonak Roy, founded Theranos to realize this vision. However, they soon discovered that microneedles were incapable of drawing sufficient blood. Undeterred, they adapted their concept, conceiving a credit card-sized blood testing machine that required just a pinprick's worth of blood. The device would then interface with a larger machine that ran diagnostic tests. This toaster-sized machine, a powerful companion to the blood tester, would conduct chemical and conductivity analyses to detect 240 common ailments, from vitamin D deficiency to HIV. This revolutionary duo could bring healthcare diagnostics to the masses by making medical tools accessible to all. Holmes and Roy envisioned a future where Theranos devices were in every household, saving countless lives through early diagnosis. The machine could monitor hormone levels, alerting healthcare professionals when adjustments were needed, like prescribing additional medication or even summoning an ambulance. This innovation had the potential to bring affordable healthcare to underserved populations. Blood tests might become something readily available while shopping, costing a mere $10 or $20. In emergency situations, such as war zones or natural disasters, Theranos machines could be lifesavers. Ultimately, the promise of Theranos was to make healthcare accessible to everyone, regardless of location or financial standing. With this groundbreaking technology, healthcare and diagnostics could be reimagined and revolutionized for the better. The Edison's unraveled dream. Theranos set out to create the Edison, an innovative device aimed at testing up to 240 illnesses using a single drop of blood. However, they struggled with numerous issues such as the unfeasibility of using just one pinprick, accuracy of results, temperature sensitivity, maintenance, and problematic measurements of blood components. Despite these obstacles, Theranos management remained focused on moving forward rather than investing in adequate research and development. Critics argued that the company needed at least 3 more years of R&D before their product could be market-ready. Desperate to revolutionize blood testing, Theranos embarked on a journey to create the Edison, a miraculous machine that was meant to test for a staggering 240 medical conditions with just one tiny drop of blood. Unfortunately, this ambitious plan quickly began facing roadblocks. The primary challenge lay in the fact that extracting a single pinprick of blood for testing purposes was simply unattainable. Engineers labored tirelessly to design microchambers that could properly channel the blood within the machine. However, despite numerous attempts, the device couldn't successfully test for more than 80 common diseases. The Edison's woes did not end there. The accuracy of the test results raised concerns, as the blood sample became increasingly diluted during the screening process, jeopardizing the trustworthiness of the outcomes. Furthermore, issues like temperature sensitivity, frequent pipette clogging, and the inherent inaccuracies from pinprick extraction when measuring sodium and potassium levels, meant that the Edison was facing an uphill battle. These concerns cast a shadow of doubt over the credibility of the Edison. Theranos lab director, Alan Beams, even managed to convince the company to abandon the idea of an HIV test using their technology. The disastrous consequences of using an unreliable machine for such crucial testing were unthinkable. Despite these mounting problems, Theranos did not prioritize sufficient resources for research and development. This negligence only fueled skepticism from experts, with some even claiming that it would take 1,000 years to achieve the Edison's ambitious goal of 240 tests with a single drop of blood. More optimistic critics still insisted that the company needed an additional 3 years of R&D before reaching the market. The rise of Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes. Unfazed by technical hitches, Elizabeth Holmes thrived as the charismatic leader of Theranos, capturing the attention of Silicon Valley in amassing a fortune. Compared to a female Steve Jobs, Holmes quickly gained a loyal following, and with it, the financial support of investors. Partnering with acclaimed ad agency TBWA/Chiat/Day and securing deals with Safeway and Walgreens, Theranos soared to a valuation of $9 billion. However, as hype and expectation continued to build, the company's true capabilities lagged behind. Theranos' decision to adopt a release now, perfect later model, typically associated with software startups, would prove to be one of many missteps as the company's credibility came under scrutiny. The allure of Elizabeth Holmes, an enigmatic young entrepreneur heading up the groundbreaking biotech company Theranos, proved irresistible for many in Silicon Valley. Her striking style and magnetism helped establish her status as a female counterpart to Steve Jobs, a perception further reinforced when she engaged TBWA/Chiat/Day, the same ad agency responsible for Apple's iconic campaigns. As Holmes' star continued to rise, so too did Theranos' fortunes. The company's meteoric ascent saw them secure lucrative partnerships with the likes of Safeway and Walgreens, with the ultimate aim of revolutionizing the world of blood testing through their innovative Edison device. By 2014, Theranos boasted an impressive valuation of $9 billion, and their momentum appeared unstoppable. Despite this apparent success, cracks began to form in Theranos' veneer. The company's adoption of a software startup mentality, which entailed releasing imperfect products with the intention of addressing flaws later in the development process, soon drew criticism. In an industry as critical as blood testing, this approach signaled a worrying departure from the rigorous safety standards usually employed. As time would reveal, Theranos' cavalier attitude towards development was but one example of the deception that ultimately came to define the company. As the hype surrounding Theranos skyrocketed, the true capabilities of the company remained grounded in reality, setting the stage for a shocking fall from grace. The Theranos Deception. Theranos, in its desperate quest to revolutionize healthcare, skipped over essential research and development. The company misled investors, journalists, and the FDA by making outlandish claims about its Edison device that could perform 800 tests with minimal blood. In reality, the device could only perform a fraction of those tests, with most work being outsourced to machines from other manufacturers. Even regulators evaluating Theranos were deceived, as the company secretly used third-party machines for proficiency tests. Had Theranos dedicated more time and resources towards research and development, perhaps it could have revolutionized healthcare as intended. Unfortunately, the company's haste to launch the Edison gadget ultimately led to its downfall. Theranos' vision was grand, with claims that their Edison devices could perform 800 various tests using just one drop of blood, provide results in less than 30 minutes, and were fully FDA approved. However, these were nothing more than fabrications. Of the 240 most important tests, the Edison could only perform about 20 on a good day. The Edison's limitations meant customers visiting Theranos test centers couldn't have all tests performed with a simple pinprick. Only immunoassays were possible. Hematology and chemical tests still relied on traditional blood draws from veins. Samples would then be transported to a Palo Alto lab for testing using machines from other manufacturers, like Siemens. Theranos Deception reached even further, ensnaring the regulatory bodies tasked with assessing the company's laboratory and blood testing facilities. Proficiency tests, including thyroid, vitamin D, and PSA tests, were conducted in the labs. However, the company cunningly used third-party machines for these tests instead of their Edison, knowing regulators would assume they were using their in-house technology. Ultimately, Theranos' facade fooled almost everyone, including investors, journalists, the FDA, and other regulatory bodies. But the truth finally came to light, revealing the extent of the deception that had taken place within the company. Deceiving claims behind Theranos. Massive deceit was involved in the promotion and operation of Theranos, a company that claimed to revolutionize blood testing. Cherry-picking data, making false claims about their Edison device's accuracy, and even fabricating demonstrations to investors are just the tip of the iceberg of deception practiced by Theranos. As it became clear that their product was underperforming, the levels of deception only intensified to maintain the illusion of success. The manipulation of data by Theranos was exceptional. They ensured that only the successful test results, often conducted in labs with third-party equipment, were presented to interested parties. Further deception ensued as Theranos falsely claimed the efficiency of their Edison device had been verified in peer-reviewed journals. In reality, the only published article about Edison appeared in an obscure Italian journal, with inconclusive data from just 6 patients. Contrary to the company's claims, Theranos services were far from more accurate than conventional blood tests. In defense of their bold statement, Theranos cited that 93% of false results from traditional blood testing resulted from human error. This implied that their automated Edison device must be more accurate. However, they conveniently left out that their own accuracy rates were lower than competitors' rates. Regulators discovered that the Edison machine was only 65% accurate on average and failed in 87% of testosterone tests. Even the demonstrations given to investors were fabricated. Early on, Theranos used mock machines that didn't perform real blood tests, creating an illusion of effectiveness. They continued this deception by putting a small amount of blood in the Edison during VIP visits. After their departure, samples were sent to a lab and processed with Siemens equipment, ensuring accurate results while keeping the investors none the wiser. Outsmarting medical regulations. Theranos, a now infamous diagnostics company, managed to execute a massive scam in the healthcare sector by meticulously sidestepping FDA regulations. They claimed their blood testing device, the Edison, was merely a tool to transfer information and not a medical instrument, thereby avoiding regulatory scrutiny. When pressured by the U.S. Army to obtain FDA approval, Theranos stalled and eventually dropped the project after their contact retired. To maintain an air of legitimacy, they selectively sought and received FDA approval for a few tests that produced reliable results. This allowed Theranos to publicize their FDA endorsements and reap the benefits of copious free publicity, all while masking the true extent of their deception. Silencing voices at Theranos. Employees of Theranos experienced high levels of discontent due to the company's misinformation campaign, resulting in a considerable staff turnover. Theranos ensured workers signed confidentiality agreements to protect company secrets, despite numerous resignations. To maintain operations, Theranos exploited Indian employees reliant on work visas. This led to tragic outcomes, such as the suicide of biochemist Ian Gibbons, who was demoted for questioning the company's honesty. Theranos' actions harmed countless patients and eventually led to significant financial repercussions. Within Theranos, a prevalent culture of dishonesty led to immense dissatisfaction among employees. The extent of the company's deception resulted in a substantial staff turnover, with resignations occurring left and right, even among the executive team. Despite this, Theranos successfully maintained a veil of secrecy by requiring employees to sign confidentiality agreements that prevented them from sharing harmful information with the press. Desperate to keep the company afloat, Theranos employed a devious tactic, hiring Indian employees dependent on work visas to stay in the United States. This made them reluctant to jeopardize their positions by speaking out about the company's problems, knowing that losing their job would result in deportation. Thanks to Elizabeth's boyfriend, Sunny Balwani, and his connections in the Indian tech industry, Theranos quickly filled vacant roles with these vulnerable workers. Tragically, the poisonous atmosphere at Theranos led to the suicide of Ian Gibbons, a British biochemist who had dedicated years to working on the company's immunoassays. After voicing concerns about the company's integrity and the machines used for tests, Gibbons was demoted and replaced with a less qualified scientist who would remain silent about company malpractice. Despite the demotion, Gibbons stuck with Theranos, hoping to improve the Edison. However, his mental health deteriorated, and he ultimately took his own life. The full extent of the damage caused by Theranos' deceitful practices may never be known. Their Edison boxes were used over 1 million times in Arizona before Walgreens terminated their collaboration. This decision forced Theranos to reimburse the $4.65 billion they had received for blood tests in the state, spelling financial ruin for the company.
In retrospect, Bad Blood serves as a cautionary tale, shedding light on the potential consequences when ambition, deceit, and the hunger for success outweigh the pursuit of truth and honesty. Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos embarked on a venture that captivated Silicon Valley's attention, promising to make healthcare accessible and affordable. However, behind the facade of innovation and success laid serious technical limitations, false claims, and cover-ups that would ultimately bring Theranos to its knees. As you reflect on this book's summary, one is left to ponder the cost of dishonesty and the necessity for ethics in the pursuit of revolutionary ideas.